You're listening and watching the Real Anime Podcast. My name is Mohnish, and as always, I'm here with my co host Lewis. And today we have a very special episode about Takeshi Kitano's film Sonatine. And just before we get into the film, though, just want to say a very quick thank you to our audience that have been finding us on Instagram and TikTok. I mean, you guys are reaching out with your comments and everything, even on YouTube. We're all seeing that. Thank you all so much for the support, and it is showing on our Spotify as well. We just wanted to come on and say thank you very quickly. So, Luis, any thank yous for our audience?
Thank you very much for the support that you guys have given us over here. I mean, man's got to do the hand to make it more dramatic, right? And thank you for just listening to two blokes just talk about films itself. We've been doing this for almost 3 years, where you've seen me change my set design a few times. Remember, like the F1 episode, I was in another place in Kajang. The other place, I was in Klang. And the other one, I was in Batu Pahat. And yeah.
I think also just very quickly, we wanted to say big thank you for your reactions on Instagram for the F1 episode that Lewis was a part of as well, where he was talking about it, and also for the Blue Giant episode where I was talking about it. So those hit some unprecedented numbers, and we just want to say thank you. But like everything else, we are now going back into the film that you are all here for, which is Takeshi Kitano's classic Japanese Yakuza film, Sonatine. Now, first off, Sonatine is not your everyday Japanese sort of Yakuza thriller action film. Don't get me wrong, they have these elements in that film. But this film is very much more of a gangster holiday film. Let's put it that way. I like to describe it that way because when you watch it, you're going to really see the gangster holiday element.
It should be called Gangster Paradise.
Gangster Paradise. That should have been. And what's going to blow your mind is that Joe Hisaishi, the guy responsible for the Ghibli soundtracks that everybody loves, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Boy and the Heron, this guy also did the score for a gangster film done by Takeshi Kitano. And it has such an elegant feel to it, no? Like, it makes the film feel so elevated, in my opinion. But hey, Lewis, can you tell our audience a little bit about what Sonatine is about, actually?
Okay, so Sonatine itself, so obviously it follows Takeshi Kitano over here, where if you know him from the previous film where he was a policeman in Violent Cop, now he becomes a gangster, right? So long story short, like, there were a bunch of like gang, not to say gang wars itself, but there were like some fightings, which some shootouts were happened at the bar itself, and there was a scene where literally Takeshi Kitano's character decided to dunk a man inside the sea itself because he did something bad, dunked the man in the sea, and then he got killed after that.
Sorry, I just wanted to interrupt that for 1 second because I love that scene, and I think the dialogue in that scene was crazy because they were dunking him in the sea, and one of them talks about fishing. I freaking loved it. Like, bro, if we go to Hokkaido, the fishing is actually quite powerful there. I'm like, what? He's drowning right there. I'm like, brother. But anyway, Luis, go ahead.
Then after that, so then obviously a bunch of things happens in Tokyo which forced them to move to the beach side where they lay undercover, and it's just basically like gangsters' paradise. All these bunch of gangsters on the beach itself, like doing their own thing. Even bloody hell, they were even using their pistols and shooting at like the birds or like the cans. Remember in that scene on top of each other's head, because I'm just like, yeah, that's more or less the story itself. It's a fantastic film.
For those of you who are watching our video, you can see behind Luis, he's actually got a really cool backdrop of Takeshi Kitano doing some of that exact thing he was talking about just now. So yeah, do check us out on video as well. But Luis really had a great time, I'm guessing. But Luis, I suppose one thing I wanted to ask was, what is something about this film that you think was really interesting? Like, not your favorite thing, but just an element of the film, maybe the cinematography, maybe the acting, maybe the story, maybe the music. What was interesting to you and why? Like, it was a bit unusual, maybe?
Let me give you guys some food for thought. when you see a gangster, you probably think that like he's like he does a lot of bad things, right, and all of that. But at the end of the day, these guys are all human beings. One of the things I really learned from the film itself was I got the exact minute right here. I got the exact minute in the 55th minute of the film, 55:35 of the film itself. You see all the you think gangsters are all hardcore, they all be like they all have like no shame or whatnot. You see these guys over there just playing, just dancing at the beach, doing everything. It really shows that like sometimes you never judge a book by its cover. You know, never judge a book by its cover. These guys are literally just on holiday having fun. Okay, minus some bits of the violence, but one of the things I really loved about the film is the subtext behind the film. You know, sometimes in society we probably okay, yes, we do label people like maybe gangsters as like not like good members of society, but I guess once you see like these sort of people like in their own natural element, they're just like you and I. They're just like normal humans who just want to have a bit of fun. Okay, maybe
The only difference I will say between normal humans and whatever is they obviously kill people for a living, and you know
okay.
they're into crime, so that's obviously not the ideal member of society we're looking for. But what I will go ahead and say, Louis, is I like your point, because it's actually something that was interesting to me too, because I feel like when I look at it, it's kind of, I know they're running away because after the gang violence they have to kind of take a step back and go to the countryside so that everything can cool down, but they end up going on this weird beach boys trip. Like, I don't know if it was by design or not, but like even the picture behind you where Takeshi Kitano is holding that to his head, it's not actually, how do I put this, it's not actually something you would feel incredibly threatened by, but I feel in the general sense, violence is used as such a threatening way in Yakuza films, gangster films. But in Sonatine, they're literally shooting cans off their heads. They're literally, some guy puts a coke can and a pew and shoots it off. And I'm like, wow, the way he turned gangsters into just bros on the beach. Very problematic, dangerous bros, but they're on the beach doing their thing.
Yeah.
But Louis, like you mentioned in our previous episode, we talked about Violent Cop. So Violent Cop was Takeshi Kitano's directorial debut, his first film, and Sonatine is his fourth film. So there are two films in between Sonatine and Violent Cop, right? Now the question I want to ask you, because you and I are in a slightly more unique position to answer this particular question, what do you think Takeshi Kitano has improved as a director, as a filmmaker, in the space between Violent Cop, which came out in 1989, and Sonatine, which came out in 1993? How do you think he's improved? Because if I'm not mistaken, a bit of trivia for everybody, Louis watched Violent Cop twice before the episode that we recorded, and he enjoyed the film. So I think he's in an interesting position to answer this question, because it's like, what did he improve as a director? How do you see the improvement
Okay.
as a director?
For me personally, Violent Cop in my heart will always be the number one film. For me. I love it too much. If you go on Man's Letterboxd, I did a review twice. First round was 4.5 to 5. But back to the question itself. I mean, as we get deeper, deeper, and deeper into Takeshi Kitano's filmography itself, one of the things I really felt like he's improved in would be his storytelling and the ability for him to be able to talk more itself. Because remember in Violent Cop, in the entire film he probably only said like 30 lines in total, but this is the first time where you get to see a different side of him as an actor, and also him directing, of course, where he's starting to be more expressive through words, right? Because you know him, Takashi Kitano is a comedian. He basically can do a lot of things without saying anything, and it's still quite funny, to be honest with you. And I really like how the storytelling has, like, one of the things I really like is the storytelling element itself. This is not really like a typical gangster film that you would associate like to like your Hollywood sort of film. Let's take like a film like Reservoir Dogs, because I'll for my research itself for this film itself, Quentin Tarantino actually watched this film. Believe it or not.
just Tarantino is actually a huge fan of
Oh yeah.
Takeshi Kitano.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's a huge fan.
So I watched like I read a bit about it and then what he had to say. Then it kind of like reminded me a bit like if you were to use like two gangster films as an example, like maybe let's take like something like Reservoir Dogs. First, I thought it was maybe Godfather would be a good choice, but maybe another film example would be Reservoir Dogs. Now you have let's say you have let's say over here on my left hand, which is the right hand for you guys, you have a film like Sonatine here, Sonatine right here, right? Then on my right hand you have The Godfather. Okay, these two films are gangster films. One, maybe some things they share in similarities would probably be the brotherhood, the family, and all of that, right? But one of the things that I really like about Kitano's storytelling, if this is, it's not like your typical gangster films or like Hollywood where you know you have the family, there's a problem, you go out there and settle the problem. No, this film itself, it's not like a Hollywood film where it goes from point A to point Z. Sometimes you start at Z, sometimes you start at B, sometimes you start at A, where you know they don't go looking for the problem itself. Why? You just see a bunch of blokes at the beach just playing, doing their own things. I don't think that's it's like a typical gangster film. I think it's just like gangster paradise. It's just like
we're only reminded that they're gangsters for the moments when they start shooting shit off people's head.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like then you start remembering. Oh shit! Yeah, he's a gangster. Oh my god!
You don't see this sort of things in like a film like Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction or whatnot, where in Pulp Fiction you see Samuel L. Jackson like about to like sing a verse from the Bible itself, and then after that, basically shooting his pistol after that. Right? You don't see any of that.
Well, yeah, but also I will say that Tarantino's fondness for dialogue and the way he tells his stories are just it's the direct contrast to like Takeshi Kitano.
Oh yeah.
Because like Tarantino's violence proceeds only after like the Ezekiel speech from Samuel L. Jackson, and then of course they're talking about pork at the diner, and then after as they're walking up, they're talking about foot massages, and then when they're in there, they're talking about in the car, they're talking about Royale with cheese, and you know all that kind of stuff. Whereas with Takeshi Kitano, the most conversation you're gonna get, even if you look at Violent Cop, you're not gonna get much conversation out of Takeshi Kitano in Violent Cop. Then when you go to Sonatine, yes, there's more conversations, maybe a karaoke scene or two, but at the end of the day, that's just like about as much as you're going to get from him. He's very action forward, right? I think personally for me, what really improved is the pacing. And it's a weird thing to say, to be honest, because like you, I also thought Violent Cop was a really well made film in some ways. Obviously, that was his directorial debut, so you're going to see a lot more of an amateurish eye when it comes to, you know, he locks down the camera a lot, always still shots on the tripod, whereas there's a lot more movement here. So he got more confident with his camera work. And then, of course, the weird thing with the pacing is that he starts the film off with a very conventional pacing in the opening scenes, where it actually starts to move like a normal Yakuza film. And then after the gang violence and they have to run away and go to the beach, the beach scene for me, like Lewis as well, is one of those standout scenes because he slows the pacing down. Can you imagine doing John Wick and then like you have all the action, the bing bang boom bam, and then after that you just go and chill at the pool for like 2 minutes? I'm like, dude, it's crazy because his film becomes slower as time goes on. So to be honest with you, that's an interesting thing because as a director, he's got an eye for pacing now that he did not have in Violent Cop. You know what I mean? And that to me was what really improved lah for me. But let's go on to cinematography, Louis. What about this film's cinematography did you like, and anything you looked at that you thought was interesting? Well, he's well researched, reading his book.
I'm just doing this for sure, but one of the no, actually, I got a bunch of stuff to hear. Okay, but one of the shots I really personally like was the bit where what's her name? Aya Koku Mayas as
So Louis
Miyuki.
tried to read Lewis is trying to read his own handwriting at the moment. If Takeshi Kitano by accident listens to our podcast, please know it's not your character name. It's just Louis.
Miyuki, the lady in that scene itself, the lady in the film. I remember there was like a nice scene where it was her and Takashi Kitano in the car itself driving, and it was like a nice extreme wide shot in the day. I remember. I really like the the blend of like how the colors blend well with each other and the shot composition also, and just like you don't really see a lot of like extreme. I mean, you do see quite a few extreme wide shots in most films, but nowadays it's more or less just like sometimes like when you watch like a normal ordinary film itself, it tends to be a lot of close-ups, medium close-ups and all. But sometimes I just like it when you just do like a nice extreme wide shot, be able to showcase a bit of like the scenery itself. And another bit I liked was the bit where the guys were playing at the beach, doing the dancing with the clappers. Remember the clappers thing at the beach, and it was like a nice wide shot of like the sea behind, the sun about to set. It was just like, this is a lad's holiday. This is a lad's holiday.
But also, I feel like when you look at the intention behind the shots and the cinematography, for me, I was very interested in how his intention was a lot more clearer in this film. Like not just the kind of cinematography he did, but why he chose those shots. Why did he choose an extreme wide shot? When you could have just as easily done this in a normal wide shot or even a medium close up. So I wanted to figure out, in my opinion, like what was so special about that extreme wide shot. And when I watched it, it's because the extreme wide shot really shows more of a isolationist feeling for the characters. It makes them feel very lonely, very isolated from the crowd, which actually brings a lot more of a sadder feeling into it. Because when you do an extreme wide shot, it's to show how lonely a character is. Yes, there's some nice scenery there, but then after that's gone, the subtext is mostly about how isolated these characters really are. They look like they're having a great time, but the way it's shot, none of them are going to live to see old age. They're all going to die in a very, very violent way. You just don't know how, but they're all about that life. You know what I mean? They all live the gangster life. None of them are going to die a sweet death. You know what I mean? They're all going to die terrible deaths. Doesn't matter who your hero is. Of course, Takeshi Kitano is like the main character and the way we experience it. But even that image where he's pointing the gun to his own head, even that is sort of showing how actually hopeless and terrifyingly bleak his life is. Because for someone to be able to do that in a beautiful place like this beach, it tells you how finite his life is. He doesn't have anything to live for, not really. It really brings that sad undertone to this film because yes, there are all these moments of them enjoying themselves, but the subtext behind the emotion of how they're being shot from the wide shots, it really looks like this emotional void of space where it's like, yes, these guys are enjoying themselves at the beach, but why can they shoot cans off each other's heads and still have fun? Is it because they're crazy? Yeah, probably. But the real answer is because if one of them gets shot in the head, who cares? It was going to happen anyway. Somebody was going to piss off someone else and get shot on the street. At least you get shot in the head here, you die in the beach. So when I look at that, I was also enjoying, like Lewis said, the lad's holiday, as he put it, right? But for me, once I started to look at it properly, it became a very sad film for me because now when I see them enjoying themselves, I realize none of these people are going to live. Not really. Even if you make it to the end of the film, you know that these gangsters are not going to live a normal life. So to me, I feel like the way he chose to frame the image, the way he chose to shoot his characters, shows a lot more growth as a director because
Shoot his
white
characters.
shots. Yeah, like literally, come on now. Like,
no pun intended.
because I looked at it and I thought, oh wow, they're enjoying themselves, but I realized how wrong that was to actually look at it because these people are all going to die, and he's showing you how sad their life actually is. These people get the most joy they've ever had from going to a beach and doing nothing. But the reality of it all is these people are going to die very violently. And Takeshi Kitano, as a director, understands how to use the wide shot because he knows the wide shot is nothing to do with the scenery. The scenery is just a backdrop. The intention behind how he uses a wide shot is actually to show what's going to happen to his characters, or how sad his character's life is, or how that their joy is actually a lie. They're just trying to feel happy because it's all they're gonna ever get. This is the only chance they're gonna get. After this, they're gonna go back to their bosses, get into another fight, and someone's gonna get killed. So when you look at it that way, suddenly the film becomes a whole different ballgame, because Sonatine is one of those films in Japanese Yakuza films that was deeply influential, onto a lot of other Yakuza films that came out later. And I can see why now. I mean, looking at the genre of like Yakuza films, you see how like Lewis mentioned, the brotherhood, the lads thing, and all this kind of stuff. That's just the surface. I feel like that's how we see it on the outside, but the reality is a lot darker, But of course, coupled with Takeshi Kitano's more dark comedy style, I feel that tends to come across as a comedy, but when you really dig into it, you're going to realize that it's a lot sadder than a comedy. But Luis, now that we have that frame of mind, right? Like, how does the music play a part in this for you?
I mean, the music score itself was written perfectly, whereas, as I mentioned in the reel, where I explained a bit about the music, it blended very well with the music, because like I still have the song playing in my head, the song is still playing in my head, because every time I hear it, I feel very scared, Like, you have it, like, you have moments where the lads are like out there having fun, but once that music starts playing, it kind of like puts the fear of like emotion in you, not knowing what's going to happen next, right? It's just like a good way. It's just like the music itself blends in well with like the subtext of the film itself, like how these lads are, on the outside they're having a good time, but matched with the cinematography, the characters, and all of that, it kind of like blended well together, right? I mean, like the music itself is certainly like a different sort of tone that you're going for compared to Violent Cop itself. But overall, for the music, I feel that like it was a job well done from Joe Hisaishi himself. And like I said, the music is like one of the most important things in a film, where it's always a hit or miss. It's always good if everything, like, and plus in the film itself, you want everything to be combining itself. So obviously, let's say if one element was lacking in the film itself, then maybe other elements will help pick it up. But at the same time, it's like you kind of like have to have everything like on equal par with each other for them to be able to, like, combine everyone's strengths and weaknesses together, I would say. And yeah, I mean, that's the music. It's certainly a good piece for the film.
Yeah, no, I also want to talk about just like the reception of this film, because like Violent Cop, when it came out, I remember Violent Cop was not received so well. It was only years later where it became a classic. And the same thing is actually the case here with Sonatine, where it came out and it was not really appreciated well. People called it a very slow film, you know. To be fair, I think we would still have that critique today with some of these people coming out and saying this kind of stuff. But it's also Sonatine is also considered one of Kitano's best work across the board. It's one of his masterpieces, and it's considered a key film, if you will, in global art house cinema right now. Not just Japanese Yakuza films. So I think like Sonatine's role in what Takeshi Kitano was able to build is really just so monumental. Obviously, Violent Cop, if you all have seen our episode, is you'll know that's where it all started. So please do go and check out Violent Cop. But I would say Sonatine is a good follow up to Violent Cop. You know, it's a very much more it's different from Violent Cop for sure. There are differences, but it still has that Takeshi Kitano flavor, right? I
Oh
feel like
yes.
yeah. Like when you watch it, you'll understand it's just full on Takeshi Kitano doing Takeshi Kitano stuff. You know what I mean? Also, he's directing it as well. which, to be honest with you, this guy is really showing a lot of people that directing and acting can be done together. But of course, I'm sure it comes at a big price. But he's one of those once in a generation artists, in my opinion. Takeshi Kitano. The guy is just like literally, he's been able to do it all. Like, a comedian is the reason Japanese Yakuza films literally were turned on their head and the world started to pay more attention to Japan. It's a minimalist crime film. All his films are minimalist. From Violent Cop to now, there are very minimalist films. But you have a Yakuza film like Sonatine, which is really about nothing if you think about it. At the end of the day, it's not like the story. I'm not saying there's no story. I'm just saying the story sort of stops halfway, because you start off with the gang violence and you see what's the reason for the gang violence, because Takeshi Kitano's character, it comes from a more successful area and he flies over to an area that's not super successful. You still got kids doing crime there and stuff like that. His job is to try and bring that up, but there's gang violence, competition for territory, etc., which is why they go to the beach. But it stops there. Once you hit that beach scene, right, the film is completely a different thing on its own, in my opinion. Because you start seeing them enjoying themselves, you start seeing them doing their thing, playing children's games, all this sort of stuff, and the film just takes on a whole different persona, in my opinion. But yeah, Luis, what are the lessons you've taken away from both Sonatine and Violent Cop? Just as since these are your first two Takeshi Kitano films, what is your impression of Takeshi Kitano? Let's just go with that. What is your impression of Takeshi Kitano so far?
To summarize it, I would say that Violent Cop itself. Violent Cop itself, if I were to summarize it in a sentence, I would say less is more. More action, less talking, I would say, for Violent Cop. Whereas with Sonatine, right? I would say it's like a poetry in motion. Now, reason why I said that, because with Sonatine itself, yes, it's obviously the fourth film from Takeshi Kitano's filmography, where it feels a lot more poetic, a lot more not to say intentional, but each stuff that he does or each action that he does for his films feels a lot more intentional. Hence, you see a lot more poetry in there. It feels a lot more a lot of subtext in there. And obviously, this is only my first time watching this film, so the more I watch this film, I'll be able to give you more of a better insight. But I feel that to maybe put it in a sentence itself, yeah, poetry in motion would probably be the best way to say it, because this film also has a bit of dialogue in there where sometimes it's very serious and unserious at the same time. So it's a perfect blend of both, let's just say. You just need a bit of yin and yang in your life sometimes, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better, to be honest. In conclusion, guys, honestly, go and check out Violent Cop. Go and check out Sonatine, whichever you guys start with. I mean, we started in order, but honestly, you guys won't go wrong either way. You're gonna have fun. I will say that Sonatine may surprise you a little bit in the way that it slows down. Violent Cop will surprise you in more than a few ways. So honestly, either experience is going to be a great one for you guys. I also want to thank everyone for their support. We already did in the beginning, but I will say it again. Thank you all so much for your support and interacting with the content and really giving us more feedback and really giving us more of an opportunity to stay consistent. I'm not sure what the third Takeshi Kitano film will be, but we gotta probably work our way to his magnum opus, which is his masterpiece of masterpiece, which is called Hanabi or Fireworks, depending on which you want to choose. Actually, funny story about that. I took some inspiration from Hanabi's poster to do the poster for one of the short films that we're coming out with called Where Sunflowers Bloom, because Hanabi also has a sunflower on the poster. So I thought that would be a cool inspiration for me to take from that. Lewis obviously has his next Lost film coming out. So honestly, you guys gotta just keep your eyes peeled for this one. It's
just don't
this
get
one
lost.
is Takeshi. his next Lost film is like Takeshi Kitano meets Rush Hour lah. Honestly, like Jackie Chan makes a cameo. No, I'm kidding. But at the same time, we are really excited for you guys to see our respective films coming out. Hopefully, we'll do another Takeshi Kitano episode. We'll see. But thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. And we will see you in the next Real Anime Podcast. I've always wanted to end it that way. I don't know why I ended it that way this time.
Well, you just did.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Take care.